It's the Brad and John Show.
Disco, 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 disco. It is the BJ Show. This is the C Block. Today's date is Thursday, March the 6th, and this is Ride 740. This is the reason we do this is because of the fact that a lot of people listen to the show in the future on the bjshow.co site or the bjshow.video site, which is one's a video blog on YouTube, the other one's just a website, and you can listen to those replays right there. Okay. The Hunter Biden story. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Hunter Biden's financial woes revealed in new motion to drop lawsuit. Significant debt. He was paying attorneys to sue some dude who he was going after because of the laptop thing. I don't know all the circumstances behind that, but the lawsuit has been dropped. Matter of fact, it says, here, I'll read this. Hunter Biden's legal team recently filed a motion to just drop his lawsuit against the ex-White House aide who published the contents of his infamous laptop citing financial issues. And it talks about the fact that he can no longer afford to pay the legal fees to continue this lawsuit. Okay? There's interesting things have come out in this where they essentially say, and like, here we go again. Okay. In the lawsuit, it says, and this is actually in the lawsuit, it says, in the 2 to 3 years prior to December 2023, I sold 27 pieces of art. This is Hunter saying this, at an average price of $54,481.48. Okay, John, do the math. 27 rounded up to $55,000. What does that get you? Isn't that
a lot of money?
A lot of money. He says, now, but here's this is interesting. But since then, I've only sold one piece of art for $36,000. No kidding. I wonder.
Yeah, I wonder what changed.
Right. And then there's another quote. Similarly, for my book sales in the 6-month period before the statements, April 1st, 2023, through September 30th, 2023, based on the September 30th, 2023 statement, 3,161 copies of my book were sold. But in the 6 months after the statements, only approximately 1,100 books were sold. Oh my God! Isn't that terrible? And it goes on to say, selling 27 pieces of art for an average price of $54,000 earned nearly $1.5 million on the artwork. The Yale School grad also wrote that he expected to land paid speaking engagements and appearances after the success of the book, but that has not happened. He does not have one single paid speaking engagement. John, why do you think that is? Why? Do you have any idea?
I don't know what possibly could have changed between, that period of time and today.
The thing goes on to say in the lawsuit says, this significant decrease in revenue has impacted my ability to pay off my significant debt, which is reported in the press as being several $1 million. As a result of this, I'm not in a position where I can borrow money. Okay, also in the article, it talks about the fact that it doesn't say his place burnt down, but his place in the Palisades or something like that is quote unquote not livable. They keep referring to the fact it's not livable. So does that mean it burnt down, partially burnt down?
Sounds like that. Yeah, maybe fire or water damage, something like that.
And he's having a tough time finding a place for him and his family to move to. Isn't that so sad?
It is kind of sad, but if you take it at face value, so when I hear stories like this, I just assume that the person is faking financial woes to get a break. Like, there's no way that Hunter Biden is thinking, man, I don't know where me and my family are going to spend the night tonight. Like, that's not a real thing, I'm guessing. And I doubt that he has real, legitimate financial woes. I think there's a ton of people who would lend them, if he called and said, hey, by the end of next week, could you spot me 50 grand? I need to put a down payment down on whatever. Like, people would give Hunter Biden that money.
Yeah, well, John, you and I totally agree on that. That's why, to me, and you're exactly right, it's to the point where it's like, okay. One of the things that has always driven me nuts is people with money who cry poor. Oh, my God, I don't have any money.
Yeah.
And you know who those people are mainly?
Who's that?
Teachers. They always are.
Oh, here we go. Is there like a national author or radio host that's ever weighed in on the financial position of teachers?
Yeah, I think it's Del Walmsley, isn't it? Isn't it Del Walmsley?
No, I think it's somebody else. A financial guru who weighs in on the top millionaires. Who is that, Brad?
Susie Orman, who told you to.
Susie Orman, right. Yeah, that's exactly right. She goes by the nickname of Dave Ramsey.
Oh, that's who that is. Oh,
and her highlight is being quoted by Brad once a week.
John, I'm a boring guy. I mean,
You are not a boring guy, Brad. You're not a boring guy at all.
John's making fun of me because I bring things up too often in John's eyes. But see, here I was going to say once again. I stopped myself. Okay. See, John, you probably know people like this that talk about, oh, things are so tight for me. And, it's like my next door neighbors when I was growing up, okay? My next door neighbors were immigrants from Greece, okay? Wonderful people, but always crying poor. And yet we found out that they had like $1 million in the bank. This is back in the day when $1 million was like, 10 million today or something like that. And see, to me, the people that, and this is how I try to live my life. Under promise, over deliver. Okay.
U-Pod. It's U-Pod. Tell us your U-Pod position, Brad.
I'm never going to say, hey, this is the best radio station. I want to say, you know what? We strive to be a good radio station. If you listen, we appreciate that. We're not going to say we're the best and we're better than everybody else. And that Tracy station, we do better than her. And our people she's got right-wing people. We got ultra white right-wing people on our station. And rhinos, we don't even come within 40 yards of a rhino. I just try to go the other way on that. Okay. Second thing, have you seen the guy who's thrown down the gauntlet in the White House on Hamas? Have you seen the story that broke last night?
No, what's this about?
Trump essentially has said, well, not essentially, he's come out and said, Hamas, release our hostages, release our bodies of our hostages. If you don't do it, I think he says like in 48 hours or something like that, you will regret it. We are going to give Israel everything they need to finish the job. You're a bunch of murderers. Give us the bodies, give us the hostages, or we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. And I'm going like, yes.
Wow, I had not heard this.
Yes.
Was this just yesterday?
Yeah, it's last night. Matter of fact, if you go and see the story, it's to the point I'm going like, okay. See, and I know there are people going like, it's the top story in Fox News. Hamas terrorists respond to Trump's last warning that laid out stark ultimatum to release hostages. Let's see. This is the update of the story. Hamas terror group on Thursday dismissed President Donald Trump's latest threat and refused to release more Israeli hostages without a permanent ceasefire deal on the Gaza Strip. Hamas spokesperson Abdel Latif Laquanta, or whatever the hell his name is, said the best path to the free remaining Israeli hostages is through negotiations on a second phase of the ceasefire agreement. The first phase, see, Trump's essentially saying, and this is the interesting thing. Remember when, if you go, this is probably when you were like in grade school, or you weren't even born yet. But when Reagan, what year were you born?
I was born in 1977.
Okay, so when Reagan had problem with Gaddafi, what did he do? He bombed Gaddafi's house.
Was that Libya?
Yes.
Okay, Libya. Yeah, so I was in second and third grade then.
He bombed his house. And I think he killed his son. I think Gaddafi's son was killed or something like that. He was at home or something like that. And you know what the interesting part of that was?
What's that?
No more problems with Gaddafi. Gaddafi sort of laid low, and to the point where he was like, puffing his chest, oh, I'm not going to take any guff from the Americans, from the president of the United States. He doesn't mean anything. He's dirt under my feet. That kind of an attitude. He didn't say that, but I'm saying that's, because those Middle Eastern people always talk about feet. You know what I mean? And remember the guy, you're probably too young to remember this. Remember the reporter who threw his shoe at Bush? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I was out of college with that, yeah.
Okay. Because supposedly in the Middle East, the culture there is that the worst thing you do is to throw your shoe at someone. That's like the ultimate insult. If you take
because your shoe touches the ground, I guess, and the ground is dirty.
Right, that kind of a deal. So if you throw your shoe at somebody, that's like an FU over here in the United States. It's like, hey, that's like disco sucks. That's what
and that's why when I see a Joy 99.1 car driving, I consider them rivals, and I take my shoe off and I throw it at them. But unfortunately, there's always like a do-gooder like Brad Hildebrand behind me that calls 911.
Hey, by the way, another 911 call yesterday, John. Another nine.
Oh, wow. Did you see a piece of litter on the side of the highway?
John, I'm driving into St. Charles on I-70. I'm on the Blanchette Bridge, and this is tricky because of the fact that there's no shoulder in that bridge, and there's a SUV. It looked like a Chevy Tahoe just sitting in the right lane, right, almost literally
dangerous, very dangerous,
at the center of the bridge. And I called 911. And once again, the operator, I don't know if, I don't know who I got. Sometimes I ask, who is this?
You don't know all of them by first name basis at this point?
It's the point. I know a lot of them. And I explained to her, I said, it's on, and she says, it's on the shoulder. I go, there is no shoulder. I mean, this thing was in the traffic lane. And the problem is you're coming up, that bridge has sort of a curvature to it, and you don't really see that far ahead of you on the bridge. I mean, you do, but you don't. It's not like you can see like a mile ahead or something like that.
You do, but you don't. Yep.
And the people are in that right lane to get off at 5th Street. That's what everybody, if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to go gamble. You got to go rob people. You got to go buy drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to go to the
casino.
You got to go to Texas Roadhouse, places like that. Okay. So she was most appreciative, and she even said, how come your pal John Combest never calls us? I go, he's never called once.
You say because he has a life, and he knows that there's the safety net of the Brad Hildebrands in the world.
And by the way,
call 911 if they see a muffler by the side of the road.
I got my certificate from the Pattonville Fire Department for calling in the brush fire in the parking lot of Riverport last week, and essentially the inscription says, you averted the catastrophe that could have been the next Palisades fire. Thank you very much, Brad. So I get the, So.
I know, and you get a free trip to the fire station, and they're going to let you sit in the captain's chair, and you get to push the button that shoots the water, too. And the other first graders get to have a great time that afternoon.
And the manager at Dave & Buster's has told me drinks are on the house any night I want, and I can come in and they can let me spin the music. And I said, I'll play nothing but disco, and I'm going to invite Todd Showalter to come over and enjoy himself with me as well, too. Okay.
And then we have John Hewlett in the parking lot with his own disco demolition night.
That was what's his face at the Loop, which is sort of funny. The station that used to be the disco hating station, WLUP. Who was that? What's his name? Steve something or other, who did the disco.
Buscemi.
No, it wasn't Steve Buscemi. Who, if you know the story behind this, is, see, once again, there's another example of that. This radio station, Chicago WLUP, during a doubleheader, was it Chicago White Sox? It wasn't the Cubs, it was the White Sox. Wasn't it the White Sox?
Yeah, it was the White Sox. Yeah, but it was at the old Comiskey Park.
Right, exactly, the old Comiskey Park.
I think it was 81. It was sometime around.
Yes, exactly. They had this deal where you got like half price admission if you brought a disco record, and they collected all the disco records and they piled them in the center field. And between the two games, they put some kind of explosive beneath the disco records, and they put too much of explosive between underneath the disco records, and it blew a hole in center field. It literally blew a hole in center field, and they had to cancel the second game because they had to repair the field. So once again, it makes my point. Why is it? And it's to the point, disco sucks. The disco revolution. I wish I could find that comedian that did that bit on how he loved the disco era and how he's sad to see it go. It's so sad because of the fact that there were songs that weren't really disco that were associated with disco. Like, for example, who really gets painted with the broad brush of disco?
The Bee Gees.
Boz Scaggs. Do you know who Boz Scaggs is?
No, I don't know who Boz Scaggs is.
Boz Scaggs is a very talented artist, and one of his songs in the disco era was this thing called The Lowdown, or I think it was called The Lowdown, and it had that whimsical sort of disco beat to it and stuff like that. And the other day, I won't say where I was, but the other day I was somewhere where they were playing Barry White music. And I'm going like, Barry White, God, I haven't heard.
Oh, yeah, very deep voice, right? Yeah, the black gentleman.
We used to call him the Walrus of Love because he was a great big guy.
Wow.
And the TSOP, you know what TSOP was?
No, I don't.
That was his group of studio musicians that he called the Sound of Philadelphia. And they had a couple.
I thought that was going to be something vulgar. Okay.
No, they had a couple hits on their own. They were Barry White's TSOP. And see, what's interesting is there's so much good music. There's a guy that was with the bass player for Chic, Nile Rodgers, which to today is still lauded as one of the best bass players of all times, and he has tremendous production requests. What do you call it? Production chops, production. You know what I'm saying? I can't even
I
think
do,
this
yeah.
morning. He's been, I think he's like I think he might even be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he's done all these crazy different things. He's a producer, production credits. That's what I was going after. And once again, all these people that came out of the disco era. Look at the Bee Gees and stuff like that. I mean, they're all dead. That's sad. Do you know all the Bee Gees are dead now? Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that at all.
They're all dead. And even like the younger one, was like, they're all dead. I mean, how sad is that, But they could be like, and see, here's the difference. They don't prop these old disco people. They don't prop them up on stage. And
Like Joe Biden, like they're Joe Biden.
No, like Ozzy
Nancy
Osbourne.
Pelosi.
Like Ozzy Osbourne. Have you heard this story about that Ozzy Osbourne's going to go on one last tour and they're just
gotta be kidding.
And they're just going to sit him
Why
on.
would you do to that, man? That's so sad.
It's like the same thing with Phil Collins. Phil Collins, sad. Phil Collins is barely alive anymore, and yet they trot him out on stage at these concerts. I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, if that to me is that sad. That's sad. When somebody gets to that point, you don't exploit them. Hey, Phil, let's put you on stage just like the old days when you were playing those drums and singing those songs. No.
Yeah, that would be like taking a president who's been essentially dead for years and traipsing him out all the time just because he once was a beloved peanut farmer.
That would be like taking a radio guy who's been dead for years and teaming him up with John Combest on a morning show.
I know. The good thing is you just press the AI button and he tells his favorite 40 stories all the time,
John, you know what? My last word today, you know what's going to be?
I think it's going to be Dave Ramsey says that the number one retiree of millionaires is teachers. John, have I ever told you that story? No.
John, I am a boring guy. My last word to you is...
You are not a boring guy. What are your last words?
Have a good day, John. And my last word to you is, you know what that word is going to be, John?
No, what is it?
Disco!